right on it as we go along. Right. So let us get going. So who am I? For those who don't know, my name is Dan Cottrell. I've been writing this magazine in various different forms from this time 20 years ago. So the first magazine came out in 2003, and then of course England went on to win the World Cup. So that's what's going to happen again. So you heard it here first. Lots of fingers were crossed as I said that. No betting advice is given. So I coached at a big private school called Cranleigh, director of rugby there. I also took my son through from under-6s to under-16s in Mumbles in Wales, and they followed a pretty close model to the new rules of play. And then when the new rules of play came out in, I can't think when exactly they came out, I worked with independent coach education, rolling it out to independent schools. So I spent a lot of time in front of coaches talking about the challenges that they were going to have. And I would suggest, if this is your start on the journey, or maybe year 1 or year 2 on the journey, that they give you a really good introduction to building up rugby. So they are good. There are going to be a few pinch points and wrinkles that we need to iron out. But my idea tonight is I'm going to go through a whole bunch of things. Nothing's going to be absolute, unless it's absolutely on safety. Nothing's going to be absolute. It's just to make you think, this is something I may be able to use, it's something I can use, or this is something I might not use. And at the end, then I will pick up some questions. So with the, certainly it depends very much up to you, under 10s, under 11s, under 12s, under 13s. We had lots of questions afterwards. So feel free to jump in then, but that's probably when I'm going to get to. I think the first focus will inevitably be the new laws. Now, I'm not so worried about the playing numbers, sizes of pitches, etc. I'm more interested in, obviously, the tackle, which is absolutely the big change from last year. And first of all, a little bit about how to referee it, but mostly on how to build up your players for this year, and then talk some of the other areas around that. So that will lead us into the skills focus. And the great thing about the new rules of play is that they really drive the skills. There is a tactical approach, and it's really about organizing. And if you've working with under-8s, you will know that organizing players on the field is almost impossible. You can, unless you sort of drag them into place or have some sort of cattle prod behind, they don't go where they should go. So I've got a couple of ideas which will help with that, and then we'll just talk a little bit about team management. So before we actually focus on the laws, let's just think about the journey that we're helping them to go on, and it's a journey for us as well. So I don't know how much coaching you've done, whether you're involved in teaching or coaching in other areas, how much rugby you've played. But under-9s is a journey if you've not done under-9s before. And from my point of view, when I did under-6s at Mumbles, I ripped up my own coaching book and restarted. And when I got to under-9s, I did the same again to a certain extent, because what I thought was going to work didn't. So I'm trying to give you some things which have worked for me. And some of them, not necessarily, they're not going to go at odds with the RFU, but I'm just going to try and think of ways that are going to help you practically work your way through. And that's why I talk about what I call the season momentum. And I think the best way to think about it is to think about blocks. There's an enormous amount to cover in rugby, and if we think or worry about trying to cover everything in the first few weeks before our first game, then I think we're probably going to be fools to ourselves. So the best way to do it is to think blocks. So that the first block is up to our first game. Now, you've probably got some sort of fixture in the cards for 4 or 5 weeks ahead. Maybe it's a little bit of a festival. And that's where we want to try and get to first. And getting there first, we need to introduce the tackle. Now, this tackle is not the full-on, full-blooded, this is how we're going to tackle for the rest of our lives. This is how we're going to build towards being able to tackle. And these players, you're going to give them a diet. Now, and when I say a diet, it's not a diet where you're reducing the amount of food you're eating, not that sort of diet. It's the diet that they would have and any player would have. And then they've got to choose whether they're going to take that diet up and what they're going to do. So some of your players are going to come as fully fledged physical tacklers, probably because they've got brothers. They may or brothers or sisters. They may have brothers or sisters who've already played the game before, so they're full on. They're ready for it. And they've probably even been ready for it since under sevens, and they've been asking you, Badger, can we do tackling yet? Now, and then you're going to have other players who are going to be okay, and you're going to have other players who are treading very carefully into this season with a great deal of fear. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is the word that you're never going to say, or versions of it. Never say this is a safe way to tackle. That's a word which is banned from your vocabulary, but not banned from the way you're thinking. Because as soon as you say something is safe, someone says, there must be danger. What's the dangerous position? So good technique is safe technique, and that's what we'll focus on. We'll be positive. We won't say, don't put your head there, you'll lose your teeth. We'll say a stronger tackle is made when you get your head in this position. But you know that, and you've got to try and build that through with the coaches. So we block to the tackle. We get some sort of passing in, some sort of idea of the catch pass, and some idea of the onside line. And that's block one. And then the next block is probably half terms, maybe half terms, maybe two games and 2 training sessions away, and it's a little bit more of the tackle, an extra on the tackle, an extra on the pass, and maybe with this onside a bit more what I call tactical, which is more really organization. You're not trying to create a super duper winning side, you're trying to give the players a better chance. And then Christmas, half term after Christmas, and then the bun fights, which are festivals at the end. And that's how you block out the season. And that's what creates momentum in the season. Because we're looking at 2 things. We're looking at player development and team development. But each player needs to have the same diet of tackle pass. If they don't, then you're not giving the opportunities. It's then up to them where they take on the diet. Obviously, we want to encourage them to be better at it. And if the players are getting better, the team is getting better. And one of your main challenges is that an 8-year-old is generally selfish. And whatever we can do in team building, it's not going to be as good as we think it's going to be, but it will still start the process. It's about we, not me, but don't over panic. Don't over panic. Don't panic if the players are still selfish, except that's going to happen. Let's just help them along that road. Now, the other thing is that the game is not going to look much like rugby. It's going to be more about activity with a rugby ball. So we have to say we're not going to have lots of phases of play. There are going to be some phases of play. It's going to look messy, but not chaotic. And I come back to chaotic later on. And what we've got to do is help the players change messy into less messy. So we're trying to give them ideas of, let's just help you understand where you should stand here, why you should pass here. And therefore, we are probably going to keep them active, moving, and building them and keeping them in the sport. But essentially, 95%, and that's not an absolute figure, it's just my figure. So 19 out of 20 minutes in every session should have a rugby ball, because you're here to play rugby. You should go forward to score. In other words, the try lines are in front of you, not to the side. No game has try lines to the side. You go forward to score and you pass backwards. Now, yes, there are going to be times when you use other shaped balls. They're not going to help learning. They're just going to help engagement. You're going to have maybe times when players can score off to the side on a different shaped pitch. Again, fun, engaging. And I'm not saying we're not doing fun, engaging. Everything should be fun and engaging if we possibly can make it. But let's make it about rugby. They've come to play rugby, so let's make it about that. And in terms of learning, they've got to learn to go towards a try line which is in front of them. And they've also got to learn, which is the hardest part, which is run forwards, pass backwards. So yes, we're probably going to let them get away sometimes with a slightly forward pass in games. It's not going to be the big thing, but there's no point in playing games where we're throwing the ball forwards, because the hard thing in the game is, here's a player with a ball and here's a supporting player. And this is a hard skill to be aware where they are. Sometimes you can sort of see them out the corner of your eye. Sometimes you can turn to see them. And sometimes you're going to pass hoping they're going to be there. And that is the tough part of the game. And if we don't spend enough time passing backwards with an aim to go forwards, then we remove those chances to learn. So that is, we've got to keep the internal logic of the game going as much as possible. Yes, play things which are not necessarily rugby, but make it a small part of your training program. Okay, last year was tag. It would be interesting to see if any coach ever says, I wish we were going back to tag. I personally, this is my own view, obviously it's been recorded. I think tag at under 7s, under 8s is a terrible game. I think tag rugby is a good game at older age groups. I think it's much easier if they just play touch rugby. I understand that, I won't say this on the tag group because they've got to go another year. I understand that the tags can make it obviously tackled, but the whole business of getting that tag back on the tag belt just makes the game slow, laborious, and takes away some of the joy of the game. But that's another. So I don't think it's 15-minute halves last year, so ignore that. But obviously there are no scrums, and there's going to be no scrums this season. The new things are going to be a hold tackle, a full tackle, and then the rip pass or the clearance pass. And they're going to be the new things that you're going to have to take into account. I think there's going to be one more player on the pitch, but they're going to have to take into account the hold tackle, the full tackle, and the rip pass and clearance pass. So let's work on the full tackle first of all. It is made simpler because of the change in the laws. The change in the laws says that really every tackle has got to be below the sternum, and that really means below the ball. A player, when they're running, they don't run with the ball at shorts level. They run with the ball just around about sternum level. So we're just going to say tackle below the ball. That's your simple target area. Now, that's hard for even senior players. So I was with a group of teachers yesterday. We did 45 minutes on lots and lots of different tackle height things. I put them into some decision-rich exercises, and they were going in on the ball. They found it was a hard habit to break. But for these players who are not used to making tackles, the hard thing to do is to bend. Bending to make the tackle is hard when you're not used to it. So we're going to focus out on the skills. So full tackle obviously takes them to ground. And once a tackle is made, so here's the player on the ground, my stick man here, and they're playing up the pitch. There is no contest for the ball. These players have got to be on side, and this ball's got to be passed away. Clearance pass, passed away within 5 seconds. When can these guys move forward? Technically, they can move forward when this ball is picked up. If you want the game to flow, you make it, you're even tougher on that, and you say once it's passed. And I think for me, that just makes the game work, because this clearance pass is a tough skill. And one of the skills we're going to talk about is this clearance pass. If the player doesn't go to ground and is held, and when I mean held, I mean it means that there must be some sort of grip on the player, held for 3 seconds. Then you shout tackle. Shout hold, tackle, and then the next player comes in, pulls the ball off the player, and then it's passed away again. So it's pulled away and passed again. Now, what you can do with this player on the floor is this player, when he lands on the floor, you can pop it up to another player as they're going down. That's quite a sophisticated skill, but 1 or 2 of your players might be able to do that. And that counts as a pass away from the tackle. So they can pass away from the tackle. So we've got the hold tackle. And this will take a bit of time to work out how to referee, but it's a great one because it rewards the effort to tackle. So tackling is hard enough without making a grip. Some of the players will be able to stay on their feet. Maybe some of the more solid players in your team will be quite hard to put down the ground. So they can be held, and then they've got to pass the ball away. If you're held in a tackle, you can't score. So you can't be held, take a few more steps and score. So that's something you can't do. Right, there may be questions on the tackle as we go along, so we'll pick those up at the end. Now, it's most likely you're going to have to referee. So I'm suggesting that you play as many games in training as possible just to test out your refereeing. And I don't know how many coaches you're going to have, but it's well worth having someone critiquing your refereeing at this stage, because it's definitely a learning journey on this. So the skills focus. The first one is the new tackle rules. So how are we going to get these players to tackle more effectively? For me, I would do practice all tackling practice, which is actually working on the tackling, is on your feet. Don't do anything on the knees. I'm going to come back to where knees and that sort of way, because you need to move your head. It's all about the head position. So my focus is on something called hot ear. And that's where it will make a massive difference. So I introduce rugby for young players or any new players to tackling by playing walking rugby. And to make a tackle in walking rugby, so that's 5 versus 5. There's the ball carrier. The tackler has to get their ear in tight to the shorts. So obviously this is cartoon ear. They don't have as big an ear as that. Cartoon ear in to make the tackle. They don't have to grip, but they'll start to grip. They've got to get their ear in tight to make a tackle. And once you shout tackle, because the ear is in tight, then this team's got to pass the ball. Now, in order to get your ear in tight, you have to get your feet in close, because otherwise you can't get your ear in tight. The next thing is you have to look where you're going to put your ear, because otherwise you don't know where your ear is going. So that means the players keep their eyes open. Where your ear goes, your shoulder goes. So it's very likely that you're probably making as good an impact with your shoulder as your ear. So where the ear goes, the body goes, and you're not leading with your head. Leading with your head is, you're not saying put your forehead in, put your ear in. So if you just imagine you're moving, I'm not sure if you can see my screen, you're moving your head towards, put your ear in, your shoulders going there as well. And what I found there is that the players at walking rugby, it's low impact. The second thing is, because the player, you can then see quite quickly when a player obviously gets their ear in front, their head in front of the player. You might say, no, it needs to be to the side of the tackled player. It needs to be the side. They may start to grip, that's fine. And later on in the season, I'm going to do a bit more on introducing the tackle. But that's what I think. Hot ear in the shorts and start moving towards that. The next thing is that we've got to get them to be doing lots of tackling in training sessions, but it needs to be in what I call 5-minute blocks. So you might do the ear there, play another game of something, play another game of something, and then you might do grip here. Another game of something, full game. When I say full game, what I mean is that a full game based on the level you're at. You might have tackling. Well, I doubt you're going to have tackling at full game, but you always want to end with a game. So that's what I would do there, and then it then comes through to what I call ball toughness, because the next thing which players find hard is falling over. And this is where the knees bit comes in, because they can do things on their knees where they're wrestling and they're getting comfortable with the ground. So there are various different wrestling ideas that I can share or on the site, or yeah, I'd like to say we're the only ones, but there's so many things out there on TikTok and YouTube. You've probably seen them, but to get them on their knees wrestling, get them used to battling on the ground. And the ball toughness is that often a ball carrier will get tackled and they then go weak. So we want these players to be tough on the ball until they land. And then when they land, the preferred 95% again, 95% ball placement is the jackknife. Get the jackknife placement in. So that is, if we're looking above, the player is placing the ball about like this. Now you may say, yeah, I think that's okay, but isn't the long placement a better placement? So we're playing up the pitch, a long placement, a better placement. Well, yes, it has some advantages. One is that it's much further away from the opposition. Two, there is a if you're familiar with the term gate, there is a narrow gate for players to come through. Right. The reason why I don't use it, you can use it, but you would probably want to use other things, is a couple of things. First of all, it takes absolutely ages for an 8-year-old and for quite a few 50-year-olds, as I can attest, to actually stretch back that far at pace. If you've lost a tackle, it's easy, but if it's not so good if you've won the tackle. And we want our players to win tackles. The second thing is that there's a myth around the gate. So that it's definitely in law, but let's say the player is like this. And I'm going to try and be clever and use some different colors now. We know that the gate, I'm looking around here, just move this over to here, get that out of the way. The gate that's the width of the gate. It's really wide. That's the width of that gate. That's the width of that gate. So this one should be number 1. This would be number 2, and this is the worst one. Well, actually, what's the referee see? If the player's coming in from this angle to get the ball, they definitely got through the gate. The player comes in from this angle to get the ball. Yeah, they've gone through the gate. But then they turn around. It doesn't look like it. Now, it doesn't matter under 9s because they're not competing for the ball, but you'll get a lot more ball retention under 10s if you teach the jackknife ball placement now. And when we come on to under 10s, I'll explain that. Now, the last bit is handling focus. As I've said, the skills are use a rugby ball 95% of the time. They've got to get used to handling that very awkward shaped ball more often. And you've got to give them lots of chances to pass backwards as they run forwards. And for me, what I do with the youngest players is that there's lots of technical stuff that you can give them. I just give them what we call and external focus. Rather than saying anything other than this, try to keep the ball off your body. That's all I'm looking for. Keep the ball off your body. Now, in order to keep the ball off your body, unless you're some sort of Fijian magician, you're not going to be able to carry the ball around in one hand. So if you do carry it in one arm, it naturally will tuck into the body. And you'll say, right, we're aiming to keep the ball off the body. So keep the ball off the body. When they catch the ball, if the ball touches their body, they've got to find out ways to deal with that. Now, you might give them a demonstration or they might work it out for themselves. But generally, I'm not sure if you can see them on the screen, but to keep the ball off my body, I've got to reach out to stop it touching my body. So that's all I give them, because an 8-year-old has so many things to think about, and most of them probably not rugby related, that when you're giving them lots of things like, oh, fingers up, shapes like an oval. When I was at the Ospreys, it's the O for the Ospreys, or make your hands like a bird, that sort of thing. Yeah, those are lovely. Give them a reason to do it, and they might do it more often. Okay, so let's move on, because as you see, I'm really excited about 9s, and I want to try and get in half an hour. I've failed miserably already. So let's get some tactical focus in here. The game is still played after every stoppage off a free pass. So here are a couple of top tips. Number one is that if this is the free passer, FP, and you're playing out the pitch, the receiver stands 1 meter away from them and they are almost level with them. Don't have them behind, because for several reasons. One is the free passer needs to have as good an eye contact with the receiver as possible. And the second thing is, as soon as this ball is passed, that is a cue for the defense to race up and nail that receiver. So you just want that receiver who's got to take the ball standing still to give them as much chance as possible. But what we want to do is we want to avoid the bun fight, which is once a free pass is given to another side, it is everybody for themselves to get in the right position. So here's how I do it. So I'm pretty sure it's 7-a-side. So you give your players a letter: A, A, B, B, C, C, D. So the players on the pitch have got are A, B, B, C, C, D. When there's a free pass, it is A are going to be the ones doing the free pass, B, C, C, D. So A will pass to A. And this will happen. You can get this might go for 5 minutes. So only these two players will be getting the ball for the first 5 minutes, and they may pass it to their mate B. Who knows? That would be one of those lovely outcomes, but they may pass it, and then off you go. But then you have some organization. After 5 minutes, or when you make some substitutions, you reallocate the letters. And I can tell you again, with 8-year-olds, you have to tell them what the letter is, get them to say what the letter is back to them, and repeat it a couple of times before they remember. I don't think I've seen a coach do it, but I'm sure that some coaches would like to actually have an ink pen stamp on the player to make sure that they remember. And I can certainly tell you that when I do this with teachers, they're just as bad as the 8-year-olds are forgetting. So you've got an attacking line set up. And the same with the defense. So when you line up a defense, guess what? It's going to be A, B, B, C, C, and then I call them Super D, and they stand at the back behind. So if you're D, you're behind the attack. Most attacks race off this way anyway. And then your best tacklers, if you want to try and beat the side, obviously it's all about development. But should you want to beat the side that you feel you need to beat because it's your best mate, you want to beat them, then you have your best tacklers at A. But generally, you give every player a chance to play A, B, B, C, C, and D. And it just reduces the amount of organization that you've got to do. You could say this, the wings are C's, but they don't understand that necessarily. So attack strategy This is all about 9 and your clearing passer. And the strategy is that your 9 has to get there, and you've got to give them, in your training, you give them a countdown to get the ball away. So they know that there needs to be some urgency of getting that ball away. Now, the referee's got 5 seconds, gives you 5 seconds. So why not let's start with 5 seconds? So we're going to play a game in training. And every time there's a tackle on the ball's on the ground, the ball's got to be away within 5 seconds. And we might give a team 3 lives. Every time you don't get the ball away within 3 seconds, you lose a life. And obviously, when you lost your 3rd life, the ball is automatically turned over. Now, 9 could be any player. This clearing pass could be any, and it should be. Every player should be learning this. And this is where I get the players to learn. Again, an external focus is, and it's not so easy to say if you've had a heavy night the night before. Sit, shoot. Sit, shoot. So Friday night, I haven't had any wine yet. Sit, shoot. And the 9 arrives at the ball. And when they arrive at the ball, they sit. So that means that they drop their hips. They sit at the ball. So they sit at the ball. So that's feet either side. And then when they need to pass the ball, they shoot their hands in the direction that they want to pass the ball. And shoot doesn't mean that you drift your hands. It means that your hands shoot towards the pass. So the hands go to... Now, there is some sophistication about the full scrum half pass, but for these players here, they are working at showing their hands to the next player. And that's your attack strategy, getting this ball away within 5 seconds, and then this player here getting the ball out to the first receiver.
Dan, yes. Can the first receiver be on the move at that point?
Yeah, in open play, yes, definitely. It's only in off a free pass can they not be moving.
Gotcha.
If you can get your first receiver to move on to the ball, that would also, all joking apart, that's quite a tough skill for them. And I've got some games around that which may or may not work for you, which I'll just pick up at the end. So just remind me on that. So okay. The other thing is, it shouldn't be a case of saying, right, we want to always get 2 passes away, because that would be brilliant if you can. But if you can encourage the next player to actually shift the ball on and make a big thing of it, oh, that's brilliant. Well done, Simon. You passed that ball away first time. And this is where we talk about wins. So we can talk about wins now, or I might just talk about it on the next slide. I'll get to the next slide. Yeah, I'll come back to the next slide after. So we can talk about wins. And from working with under-8s already, it's not about the scoreline. We don't go on the pitch to lose. We go on the pitch to do the best we can. Where can we find wins for players on the pitch? One of them is we can say to the players, great, we did lots of sit shoot. There was some great stuff there. I really enjoyed that. We'll pick on players who've done that really well. We can say that the first receiver ran onto the ball. Brilliant. I really like that. So that's a great win for us. We got a first pass away. If someone scores a try, the first person you congratulate is, guess who? The person who made the pass beforehand. That's the very first person that you congratulate. And you make it all about that. Now, obviously, the player scored a try. They will know they scored a try. They'll be happy enough. I mean, you don't say, oh, no, you've scored a try. You obviously pleased for them. But the win is that pass before. And then obviously there's loads of wins in defense. And the wins are players just making, oh, great, Simon, this is the first week you've made a hold tackle. Brilliant. I'm really pleased with that. You got your ear in tight. You held the player. Brilliant. The first one. And other players, that the sort of the loons who've got brothers, you can say, that's great. You've made 3 tackles. And I like the fact that you made a great grip in that last tackle. You didn't fly in like you've been doing before. You don't see it because it's dangerous. Right, shape of training. You may think that I don't want them to have fun or be engaged. But really, at this age group, if training hasn't got some form of fun, and I use fun carefully because really it's enjoyment, then it's going to be hard for them to sustain themselves throughout the season. So the skills that you're doing are very important, but there has to be some lightness to what you're doing. So as I said before, the tackle is block it out in the session, right? We're going to do 5 minutes tackle, and the first 5 minutes tackle could be very slow. It could be walking rugby, and then the 5 minutes later on could be a little bit faster. So it's sort of almost coming close to gameplay when they're starting to maybe make tackles. And here, what I think is important is this is probably more 1v1. This here is more like 2v3. 2 tacklers versus 2 attackers versus 3 defenders. Because most tackles are missed because they think someone else is going to make the tackle. I mean, I made a career out of it, making sure someone else was on my inside to make the tackle. But you can actually create situations where, and here it is, it's a slice of the game. It could be you passing it in here. So see, coach, you have a defender next to you here. You have a defender here and a defender there, and an attacker here and an attacker here. This distance here, I don't know, maybe 4 meters. And then you pass the ball here. So you've got a defender coming in from the inside, a defender coming in here, and a defender over here. Now, some attackers may pass out, but most of them will run. So they may run into here, they may run straight ahead, or they may run around there. So these players now are facing a really game realistic situation where they're making the tackles that they'd have to make in the game. So do some 1v1s to build up some confidence and techniques. Do some 2v3s to get them making game tackle decisions. And it could be here that all you're looking for is, I don't want a full tackle, I just want a hold tackle. So just make sure you get your ear in tight and grip. That's all I want. And then you rotate the players around. Skills-wise, so I've talked about the tackle. If you're going to do a skill, it's no more than 5 minutes on the skill. What I mean by that is you make it have a clear intention of the skill we're going to do. Right, in this exercise, we're just going to keep ball off body. So every time you get receive a pass, you've got to keep the ball off the body. You use a lives thing where we're going to do it, see how many lives you're going to lose by the end of it. 5 minutes on that, and then you'll go into a different exercise. So the other thing then is how much play is in there. So I think for under 8s, 1 hour is a good time. You may have longer. I think an hour is about a good time. In that, you need to play rugby as much as you can, building in the fact you've done a couple of 5, 10 minutes, 10 minutes on tackle, maybe a couple of skills things, but the rest is rugby. And it could be the full game, but it could be, depending on your numbers, just slices of the game. So, right, we're going to play a couple of rounds of 4v3. And then we're going to substitute some players in, or we're going to play in a very narrow area, 7v3. So 7 attackers versus 3 defenders. And we're going to start here and just see how far you can get down the box. See how you get on with that. And yeah, these players are going to find it hard. It's going to be congested, but it looks like the game of rugby, and it's a game. And from your point of view, you're not having to throw in too many extra rules. You're just using the rules as the game. The only real manipulation is the size of the pitch, the numbers, and then maybe how aggressive the tackle is. Is it a hold tackle or is it a full tackle? Okay. So summarizing, gone over a bit. So summarizing, get your season into blocks. Anyone who thinks they've got their team full up and prepared for the first game has either been coaching them illegally since Christmas. I'd love to have some food brought into me as well, Simon. You didn't turn your camera off in time. But don't drop any down that lovely white top. That would be embarrassing. So no team will be fully formed by the first game, and very few teams will be fully formed by the end of the season. But if you've worked in your blocks, you will be seeing players on their journey. So here's a player, and you may have seen these things before. Their improvement, you hope, will have some form of upward slant over the season. But they will drift in and drift out because of lots of different things. But can we intervene each time with little things which are just going to help them become a little bit better? But we've got to go back to the basics. We don't cover tackling off in week one. We tackle every single week, and we just make them a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. You see that I said games for tackle. Yes, you've got to do some confidence piece, the confidence piece, and that's important. That's why we slow the games down. But we play games to give them chances to get involved, and you can praise the good bits of the tackle, and it's not that important. Improve the passing rate by getting the 9 to clear quickly, and maybe the first receiver to encourage to pass on once. I'm not a fan of saying we're trying to get 4 passes in. I don't think that's realistic. Because it's not the game, because you pass when you need to pass. But if this first receiver has an idea that if they can move the pass away, then they're getting the ball away from the defense, then it makes sense. And this is where I also throw in, for my younger players, something called the food rule. I can guarantee you've got kids, because this is why you're on here. You'll know what it's like. You drop a piece of food on the floor at home. Well, the kids drop the food on the floor at home. Unless you've got a dog, if you can pick it up within 5 seconds and they eat it, scientifically it's a disaster, but for most of us, we've managed to survive this time. So when you're playing rugby and a kid drops the ball, you just play the food rule, 3 seconds to pick up the ball, and then just play on. Because it just takes away the worry. So every time they drop the ball, they don't panic, they can just play on. And in terms of team management, and I'm sure you do this already, it's give every player equal minutes on the pitch. And the simple way that I've eventually got to, you would have laughed if you'd seen the spreadsheets that I used to produce. In the end, one of the other teacher guys I was working with said, right, there's a much easier way, right? Number every single player off, 1, 2, 3. Let's say you've got 12 players there. I think it's 7 on the pitch. So 1 to 7, you start. And then after 3 minutes, 8 to 12, replace 1 to 5. Then after another 5 minutes, the next group come back on and they replace and they replace and they replace. And it reduces the number of arguments over selection, and it doesn't matter. Therefore, if at the end of the game everyone's got pretty much equal time, the score doesn't matter, because you're not there to win. If you're there to win, you keep your best team on, and then you can look at the wins in terms of attack and defense. Right, so just quickly, in terms of trying to get the players to move on to the ball, and then if anyone's got any questions, a little game that I play is called the Go Forward game. So if you get touched, the ball carrier, they touch the ball on the ground. Now that just helps everyone know that a touch has been made. So they touch the ball on the ground, then they pass, and the receiver cannot be standing still. Now it's very unlikely they're going to be running backwards, so they've got to be moving. Now, as they get better, the idea they've got to be moving forward. So if they aren't, they lose a life. Now, you notice I've said lose a life quite a few times. I'm used to say turnover, but now I say you've got 3 lives. You might give them an extra life, a bonus life for some other things, but they got 3 lives. So that means if this receiver isn't moving on, all they know, they've lost a life. They've got a chance to redeem themselves. If they do it again, they've got another chance to redeem themselves. If they do it a 3rd time, probably the rest of the team will be telling them that they've got to do it, but at least they've had a chance. And that's why I use 3 lives for those sorts of things. So that's the go forward game. Now, if you can get your players to be moving on to the pass, I think that's fantastic. I think what you'll find is a lot of players will jump into the pass. I don't know why they do it. They do eventually stop doing it. But for some reason, they want to jump at the pass. So the more that they can be in games and have a chance to move on to the ball, the better. Right. Okay. 20 minutes or 19 minutes over my 30 minutes. So feel free to jump in and ask any questions. I mean, don't feel obliged to stay online if you need to go, but I'm here for questions.
I was going to ask Dan if it's all right about refereeing.
Yeah.
And obviously new tackle height rules. And years ago, I coached this age group, but it's a long time. That's why I'm back. And back then, there was a lot of grabbing of shoulders.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving the head out of the way because, as you said, they struggle to bend down. They're moving their head out of the way and they're just grabbing shoulders. And refereeing, I want to educate them, but in a match condition, I don't want to keep stopping the game and turn over every single time they're coming into contact at chest or shoulder. But I don't know how. Maybe that's just unavoidable now.
Well, I think, well, first of all, in a sense, the fact that you've been there, you'll know that you have in your mind this wonderful picture. But if you've been there, you know it isn't like that. The thing is, actually, if you're quite tough early on in a match, generally the players then learn, they change, they have to adapt. That's probably the best way, but you do it in a positive way. You say,
yeah.
You might give the first 1 or 2, you might say, right, just going to stop there, or right, all tackles are going to be below the ball, and that's what I'm looking for. And then from then on, if it doesn't make any difference, if they sort of go in and they haven't really made the tackle, you just say play on.
Yeah.
But otherwise, and then you might be having a word with them. But the first few games will be like that, and of course, players start in the game, and that's going to be difficult. It is a tough part of the game, and yeah, a certain amount of sympathy is required. But generally, if they're coming in at that height and going like that, the ball carrier is probably going to be running on anyone. You might just say play on. But I mean, if it is an impact, then you probably will be blowing up. I will say this is the first proper weekend of full-on new tackle height laws. Phil Lewis, and I'm going to share he's done a brilliant rules summary, actually, so I'll share what he's done. He says we're going to learn a lot this weekend. It's not going to be as bad as I think people have said they think it's going to be, but we're going to learn a lot. I think we're going to learn a hell of a lot when the under-9 season starts. If you've got kids who are in schools, then this will be happening in a week or so's time, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. That's all I can say at the moment, because
we don't know yet.
But from a referee's point of view, I think you've picked up how you would deal with it, number 1. But number 2, so I'm in the dark here. That's better. Forgot about that. The Knights are drawing in. Number two is that from your team's point of view, it's the ear to shorts makes a big difference. They've got a target. They know where they've got their ear to go. They keep their eyes open, and then their feet tend to follow. And there's lots of technical stuff about feet, but in the end, it's where you put your head that matters, and your feet can dictate where that goes.
No,
I wish I had a better answer than that, but I think you've identified where it's going to be. It's going to be of a challenge.
Yeah. Thanks.
Dan, can I just ask about this last game? You talk about touch, so is that sort of a game of touch rugby you had in mind?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, certainly depending on where you are with your players, there's some other versions, but just a two-handed touch on the shorts, and so
that might be a good way to sort of. So we haven't done any touch. Obviously, we've been busy using tags. So touch can be a part of under nines training.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is. I mean, I think I've used is bib touch. So the defense hold a bib, and they hold the bib between their hands like this. So I hope you can imagine that. I don't know I know it's a thing, but I'm holding a bib like this between my hands. So you've got the defense has got to make 6 tackles, and a bib touch is the bib has got to touch the player on the shorts. So in order to do that, you can imagine the players leaning forward to make the tackle. It's very clear they're not getting their hands in the way of the pass, and it's another way of doing it.
Okay.
And then after six touches, the defense drops the bibs. The other team pick up the bibs, and then they play with it.
And why are you using the bibs? Is that sort of to make sure they're getting their hands forwards instead of sort of out wide and doing that?
And by you doing your wide hands, that is the width of the defense. If I put my hands like this over a bib, that's my shoulders to the width of the defense. Now all our tackles are made with inside our shoulders. So we don't make tackles, well, with my arm span, say 6 foot, all the tackles are 3 foot. So if I've got 6 players holding bibs like this, that means that instead of them being spread out like this, they're now spread out like this. So it makes it narrow. But yes, a touch. Yes, so touch rugby.
Stop them
but
from
it's
doing
quite
that
nice
poke
way.
and tackle. You know, the ones which are sort of, I'm kind of pretending to commit, but I'm not really. I'm just sort of flapping a hand, and I can sort of let them run.
Yeah, so this makes it much clearer. But the thing is, with 8-year-olds, they're not very good at their proprioception is not very strong. So they're not so very aware of their body, and also you might have to be saying that you might have to be quite tough on what you think is a tackle. So you'll be right on top of them. They won't say whether they've been tackled or not, but you'll be able to see that.
Cool. Thanks.
I swear when we do touch, it's got to be 2 hands, and it's got to be thighs or knees.
Yeah,
and that's it. Nothing else counts.
Definitely. I mean, I would say, Keith, I'll come to you in a moment then. Okay. I would say that touch rugby is not a very good training game now. I've moved away from it. There are other versions of it, but I think with this group now, they've got so many other things to learn that the touch rugby or these sort of versions of touch rugby start the process. When you're getting to under 11s and above, I would move away from the traditional touch rugby and move to other things, but that's for another time. Keith.
Hi, I've got a couple of lads last year that were actually using the rugby ball as a bit of a fend.
Yeah.
How is that? I'm just coming back to under 9s, as the other gentleman said, come back from seniors back to under 9, so I'm a little bit feeling my way around again. Is that legal? Are they allowed to? can the opposition rip the ball off them this year or not? I'm not.
No, that's a good point. So under nines, they're not allowed on the ball, and
No.
they're not allowed to go for the ball at any stage. Now, it's going to be fascinating under tens, but we don't have to worry about that, about ripping the ball. But they're allowed to rip it under. So yeah, you can't fend with the ball. You can't fend full stop.
No.
And yeah, you'll know that sometimes they will fend with the ball.
Yeah.
And if it gets knocked out of their hands, well, that's their own problem, of course.
Yeah.
But you just have to encourage that.
No, just looking for a bit of clarity, really. That was all.
Yeah. And the interesting thing for next year just is the fact that since you can't go for the ball, but you can rip it, is when a tackle finishes, and then you rip the ball. But
right.
It's always a bit of a get out clause, but I think watch this space to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Keith.
Sorry, can I be a bit cheeky and ask an under 10s question?
You can in a moment, but I've got
Okay.
to jump into David, I think, who's been keeping he put his hand up. Philip, well, I'll definitely answer the one. David.
So yeah, thanks very much. I just wanted to ask about kind of how much time do we spending per week with them doing contact? You know, is there a maximum amount of time that we should be allowing them to be playing in the full contact games at the end of the session, kind of thing?
So the World Rugby sets a sort of an adult level of contact during the week, with sort of like 15-minute blocks of low impact, medium impact, and full impact. To a certain extent, the players are generally quite resilient. So it's not as if you're going to be beasting them into a situation where by the time they come to the weekend, they're still carrying knocks. But that doesn't mean, therefore, that you want to be hitting them too hard, because really their fitness levels are really poor. Some of the players will have no fitness at all. One or two players are like dynamos and they never stop running. So what the main difficulty comes when players are tired, and that's where the limits go. So and I apologize because I didn't put the timings up, because I left 15 minutes up, but I think that a full game isn't going to last any more than 15 minutes. So given that your players will probably be on the pitch maybe for 10 minutes of that 15 minutes game, a 15-minute game with a bit of rest probably means that they'll have enough contact. And that would probably be the most. And 50 minutes is enough anyway. That doesn't mean that you don't have some slow motion stuff, but I think that's not a bad way of seeing the amount of contact in it. But the other thing is that you judge the players. You look carefully at what they're doing, how they're reacting, and well, you'll know. But at eights, tiers often help you understand that some of the players are very unfortunately they're just not coping with it. It's not necessarily that they're hurt; it's that they've lost confidence in themselves. And once they're in tears, there's no way back. I think for them, it's probably best for them to step out for the rest of that session. But David, I think that's a really good question, I think in all honesty, I would just think, what's the typical length of a game that we be playing, and that's the level of full contact that we should be doing in a training session.
Super, thanks very much.
Right,
Thank
okay.
you.
Philip, your under 10s question.
Yeah, sorry. I organised the under 10s as well, although we've got coaches in place. So again, when I went through those age groups years ago, I regretted teaching them how to rip, because they all forgot to tackle overnight and just decided to rip constantly.
Yeah.
But the change in the tackle height rules, that mean that the first collision, the tackler obviously has to be below the ball. So is it a second player coming in that can rip only?
Yeah, so as long as they're obviously not making a tackle, they can come in and rip. But
yeah,
generally, I think that you would not spend too much time coaching them all anyway, just because there's so many other things to coach. Mauls are are only really worth coaching once you get a chance to catch and drive.
Yeah.
Now the skills for a maul, the first skill you need to learn is great scrum profile, and you'll be starting to coach that from under 10s onwards. But in terms of mauling skills, I think that you're better off spending more time on catch pass and tackle at this level. And obviously next year it will be you'll spend more time on ruck, and then move on from there. So yeah, I think that you've almost again you answer your own questions. This is great. I like these sorts of people who answer their own questions.
Thank you.
Can
Simon.
I ask about tackle bags and pads and things like that, and what part they might play in sort of training?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because it was asked last night as well. I think that for me, you're thinking about players' confidence, and you're thinking about done with that confidence, and you're thinking about their ball. Now I've turned the pen off completely now, so it's not going to work. That's the end of that. Right, you're thinking about ball confidence and ball toughness and player confidence. So what the pads can do is that they gives them a chance to have a few soft landings when they're carrying the ball. So they may land on a pad, which just takes away that the bump on the ground. They can get used to being knocked off balance by a pad. But the main problem with pads or tackle pads is that only the kids can hold them. So they're not very good at holding tackle pads. Therefore, you're not going to get much feedback from them. So that's number one. The tackle tubes, they're massive. So again, they'll get some feedback from thumping into a tackle tube. It is some fun, but in terms of learning outcomes, not much that way. As they move up levels, then pads and tubes can play a part, and some coaches will use them more than others. But I think under 9s, it's probably a fun part of it, and may give them a little bit of ball or body toughness in a softer area. So that's probably where I would go with that. Generally, yeah. Just to as a reminder, no adult should hold a pad for kids. And I mean, we do see it, and it's just something that is worth remembering, because it's one of the things we could probably forget because there's so many other things to remember.
Yeah. Thanks.
Anything else? I'm staying until everyone goes. So if you want to go, then go. But if you want to ask other questions, then more like. And by the way, of course, you've got my email. So if there's something which comes into your mind afterwards, or there's something you want to pick up on, then just drop me a line. We'll get another chance to chat, go through it. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do another webinar on the sort of the tackle journey, because obviously I've just done a little bit on it now, but just to help people understand a bit more about how they might support their players in improving their tackle, because we can always come back to it. I mean, joking apart, even at the top level, obviously these players are making missed tackles all the time, and sometimes dangerous tackles, and they need to come back to it. So, you know, under 9s, under 10s, under 11s are just in the same boat, just with a few less or fewer, if that's the right word, bad habits. Anything else?
That's been great. I'm not, there's a lot to digest. I'm quite interested in your website and how to best use the resources and how to sort of specifically filter them to under 9s. I should have given that a bit more of a go before the webinar, but you are able to do that, aren't you?
Yeah, there's only an under 9 section, but and this is a great chance for you to ask things. So what I'm thinking of doing, or what we're thinking of doing, is doing some almost like onboarding type thing, where just a little video saying, yeah, welcome to the site. If you're an under 9s coach, this is obviously where you go, but here are some other ways to get more out of it. Now, there's over 3,000, nearly 4,000 pieces of content on there, and with the best will in the world, we can't. Our algorithms are improving, but we're relying a little bit on your own yourselves to find a way through. But so yeah, if you've got questions on what do I need to go to next, ask them. But if you think that's a good idea, then I will definitely do that. And the other thing is, I think what we're going to do is we're talking about today is start up a forum part where it could be an under-9s forum, and you all get together and say, look, we can't do this, and then people can share their experiences. We can also say, I jump in and say, oh, have you looked at this? And the other thing is, if I don't have the answer on the site, I've got to go out and find it. And I know quite a few of the answers, but I don't know all the answers. So I can go out and find somebody who's been there, done it. And we got two guys on here who've been there and done it and coming back to it. And you'll be bringing your own slightly different ways to it. But that experience of going through the under-9s once, it just makes such a massive difference the next time. I mean, Phil, looking back now, what would you say that you wish you knew when you first did under-9s? And Keith, maybe you can say as well.
I would have been more organised. So the thing I learned through all of the age groups is planning is huge. For properly planning sessions, the skills and the drills that they like, and there are some Sunday mornings where it's a lot easier just to give them the stuff that they like, rather than keep making them run laps until they start listening. But the discipline of doing a proper plan, the blocks that you were talking about, the 5-minute blocks, having it written down, sharing it with your assistant coaches if you've got parents that are helping you as well. But that's the other key thing that I found last time going to under-9s introducing tackling. At under-8s, I used to be able to manage 10 kids all at once, but bringing them into pairs, 3s, 4s, and having, we've got 15 kids at under-9s, so splitting them up into groups of 3 and having parents and giving them the confidence because you've given them the plan to just to keep an eye on them whilst you circulate and do the drills makes a massive difference.
And right, so I'm glad you said that, because we've got some parent sessions on there which you can give to them, which are for 2 or 3 players, and it are very, very simple ones. So I'm just going to make a note of sharing the player parent sessions. I think there's off the top of my head, I'm going to say 8, but I think it might be 4. But they are ones which, as the sort of lead coach, you can just give to a parent, hopefully, and you can feedback on it. So I've tried it. One group has used it, and they said it works for them. Is that they can give it to the parents. It's so simple to set up, and they've only got to look at one thing. And really, in coaching, the thing I've learned most in the last 3 years is when you're doing a 5-minute block, you focus on one thing and one thing only, and that's all you're going to talk about. Hot ear. If you got your hot ear, are you keeping the ball off your chest? Are you keeping the ball off your chest? As we go out the level, are you catching the ball before the midline? Are you getting your hands through to the target? Are you sitting when you're and that's the one thing I'm looking for. Okay, so
I've missed those parent sessions
and splitting them up. Keith, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's organisation is a definite, and I think the other one for me is going away more from the old-fashioned drills. It's 30 years since I've done this, so going away more from the old into the game scenario, I think is making I started a little bit last year. It's making a huge difference. I think it keeps that enjoyment, interest levels a lot higher.
Yeah, I mean, if I can, I'll make it into a game, but I'm also not a slave to the game, because sometimes you just need to get some reps in.
Yeah.
I think that you're right. It's you we're probably of an age where we've been drilled hard when we did our rugby, and we certainly learnt stuff like that. But it wasn't quite as enjoyable as playing some of the games.
No, I think it's got to be a happy medium, hasn't it?
Mm.
That's and it's not always easy, but obviously the enjoyment is the most important thing.
Yeah,
Kids
and sorry, Karen.
keep them engaged and keep
Yeah.
Keep them coming back week in, week out. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's that. I mean, it's a piece in itself trying to engage 8-year-olds, and it's using games, but as you say, do games that they've done before, and just put little extras in it. Just change it up a bit.
Yeah.
One of the games which I use with younger kids is I'm almost like a sergeant major. I shout at them so much. It's called Get Out of Here. And if I ask them what game they want to play, they say want to play Get Out of Here. And I think, well, just a moment. I end up shouting at you all the time. I don't say that to them, but they enjoy it because there's a bit of an edge to it. There's a bit of competition in it, and they come back to just. I mean, really, they play Bulldogs for the first half an hour. That would be that's all they want to play.
Yeah.
So if my pen would work, I would try and show you a different version. So what I might do, is so on Bulldogs, I can't draw it, or maybe I can. So Bulldogs get. Let's see if I get this to work. Come on, work. No, right. Bulldogs. 3 players versus say 8. Now the 8 players have a bib in their shorts, in the side of their shorts. So like a tag, but just a bib.
Yeah.
You say go, they run the length. The catchers or the defenders are only allowed to capture 1 player. They can't capture 2, 3, 4. They're only allowed to capture 1 player. At the end of that run and round gone through, they give the bibs back to the person they've taken off, and those 3 players who've been captured, or the 2 players have been captured, or even just 1 or none of them, they all restart. So it's the same 3 defenders versus the 8 players. They run through again, and the same process, but you're counting the bibs. So by this stage, they might have captured 0 through to 6. You say 6. Then you say, hands up, which of these players have not been caught once or twice. And anyone who's not been caught once or twice, they're now worth 2 bibs. So we run it again. And the incentive now is for those 3 defenders to try and catch the person who's worth 2 bibs. Now, we're going to guess that those 2 bibbers are the ones, and they're still wearing 1 bib, but they're worth 2 bibs, are going to be the fastest players. Now, the 3 might gang up on 1, or they might try and identify 1, and they run again through twice, and you add up all the bibs. So the maximum you can get, obviously, if you my maths is right there, that's 6, 12, 18. It's never happened. And then you give the challenge through to another 3 to do. Not everyone will be a defender because you only run it twice. So the difference here is, first of all, we know that a slow player will be captured normally on the first round of Bulldogs, and they'll always defend. So they only ever get to run through once in the game. Now they run through 4 times. So that gives them a chance to do things. The next thing is that the fast players suddenly become a target when they didn't used to become a target. And then the 3 players in the middle still have to work hard on round 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they're getting still the skills of working together, or they can work individually. It's up to them. And grabbing the bib is quite a good way of seeing whether they've been captured or not. Just making the touch, as we said before, you can look a hero by just making a slight touch on there, so it's a physical one. So that's the new version I'm using of Bulldogs. Obviously, not everyone gets to defend on in an activity. You maybe get 6 players in, but next time you play, it's 3 different guys who are going to do it. We'll remember last week Simon, Keith and Phil, they got 6 bibs. They were brilliant. The other group got 4. Let's see if we can get more than 6 bibs. Right, we're going to pick out Dan, Andrew and Arnie, and no one calls their kids Arnie these days. Maybe you've got them in Essex, I don't know. But they would be the 3, and there's a little bit of competition. See if you can get more than 6 bibs. So that's my different version of Bulldogs, and of course it's my game, so I think it's brilliant. But it does. I'm liking the outcomes at the moment, and it's fun, it's enjoyable, and there are some transferable skills, mainly that they're running forward and being evasive, and that's quite good. The key thing, though, is that a slower player who may not be so good gets 4 goes to run, as opposed to just being caught early on. Okay, so that's a game that I've been rolling out a lot more in the last, this year actually.
Oh, nice. I like that.
So yeah, so
really
if there is light, so both of you come back to coach under 9, so there is light at the end of the tunnel. But I think the other thing is that my point also is, yeah, definitely be organised. That makes a massive difference, because you can't make it off the cuff. I mean, you can with a senior team, you can sometimes do it off the cuff because the players are wise enough and bright enough to sort of get through it. The other thing is that, and that's why I've said about the blocks, don't think you can cover everything in the season. You just be patient. The coaches who are worrying about what they've got to do at under 10s sort of take the joy out of playing under 9s, and that's a hard thing to do. So when I've got coaches in January dropping me a line saying we just started to do a bit of rucking, I say, well, first of all, you're not really supposed to, and the second thing is, don't worry about it. Genuinely, it's not a race to see who's got the more skillful team. It's a chance just to build them at their pace and enjoy it. I mean, the problem will be obviously that they'll have some competitive parents who may be putting their oar in, but that's competitive parents is for another time.
Yeah, I think the end goal is when they get to 18, 19, they move into senior rugby and enjoying it. And that's got to be the goal for me.
Yeah, and it's a great moment, and I think the thing which I'm very pleased I was part of a team which agreed that we do rotation as much as we possibly could. It meant that we felt that more players stayed in the game. Other players went off to other clubs, but they stayed in the game for various different reasons. And it's really nice when my son says he goes back to see his mates in the Mumbles in Swansea, and 3 or 4 of them are playing in the Mumbles first team, and isn't that brilliant? It's not just down to me, definitely. I mean, I'd like to say that, but that's the great moment, isn't it? And yeah, the love of the game is what we can instill rather than win at all costs. You win in other ways.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm very competitive, but that sometimes makes it hard. But yeah, they win in other ways.
Yeah.
That's been really useful. Thank you. I think the idea of a forum is quite a good one. Yeah, especially if you consider, the rule changes this year in particular. Is coaches all over the country at the same age group, are you experiencing this issue? Has anyone been able to overcome this problem? What have you? This challenge? That would be good. But
we're definitely keen to do it. So yeah, I'm going to try and push that through. But in the meantime, I mean, it's your call here. I mean, I always BCC everyone because I don't think I shouldn't really pass out everyone's emails. But if you come back to me and say, look, I don't mind sharing my email with others if they want to chat, then I'll happily do that, but just do that obviously off by
Sure.
emailing me. And I know that a couple of people have certainly connected after the under 10s one. Again, it's almost like we're not in competition with each other. How did you get around this, and how did you get around that? Sometimes the questions are, how do I deal with this parent? And that's as hard as dealing with the kids.
Well, it's
Dan,
the demanding parents never put their hands up to volunteer for coaching. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's
That's
funny
the thing, isn't it?
Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, I'm gonna have to go. But thank you so very much. Really appreciate tonight. So thanks, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into all the resources and things, and
Okay, brilliant.
seeing how the boys go this season. So thanks very much. I need to dash it off. Thank you.
Okay, no problems.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, gents.
And to you.
Thank
I
you.
must admit, I can hear my wife opening a bottle of wine. So I'm going to depart. But best of luck for the season for everyone.
Yeah.
All the
okay.
best, gentlemen.
Cheers,
Thanks very much.
everybody. Thank you.
And you, thanks very much, Dan.
yeah,
Okay,
Dan,
bye-bye.
can I just
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
definitely. You
one
could. Yeah, if
thing?
you want to stay on, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, just what I think was touched on was the need for lesson planning. It's what I learned becoming the sort of accidental coach last year, that if I
I've
didn't
heard
have a
that plenty
lesson
of
plan,
times. Yeah.
yeah, you know, so I sort of started putting together my own lesson plans and getting kind of a few resources from your website, some from others, and
Yeah.
having kind of PDFs that I could just ping off to the assistant coaches and say, right, you're going to be delivering that, or this is what we're going to be delivering. It really helped, but it also helped the momentum, because the previous head coach was, you know, he's an accidental coach just like me, but we were too stop-starty. We're sort of making it up as we went, and then we were losing the kids' attention. So it was like, right, I don't really know what I'm doing, so I need a plan, and then I need to keep the momentum in the session going. And if there was one request for your site, it would be an example lesson plan of.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got that down as sort of lesson planning, and well, first of all, the thing is, I will send you some stuff that we've done, but the thing is that you've got to say, oh, that solved it, or no, I need something else, and then
Sure.
because
Your kids are
being
going to be
teaching for a
different
very
than-
long time, you build your own, what you think your own lesson plan, and what works for you, and sometimes what works for one person doesn't work for another. But I think what's come out of what you've been saying, and I think others, is that often probably the people who are on here are probably got coaches under them who need looking after. What we've done, so I'm just going to stop the share here. Second, stop the recording, because it's always going to go on forever. Where's the record button? There it is.